Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's virtual tour of the Palmdale Water Reclamation Plant. We're going to get started in about 4 minutes. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's virtual tour of the Palmdale Water Reclamation Plant. We'll get started in about 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started in about a minute. We'll give folks about a minute to file in. I'm Basil Hewitt, and I'm with the Sanitation Districts of Los Angeles County. Let's see if it's green light if we'll give it one more minute. And welcome. I'm glad. All right, very good. All right. Good morning, folks. I'm Basil Hewitt with Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts. I'm here to kick off our virtual tour of the Palmdale plant. This morning, we have with us Genesis Rodriguez. She'll be moderating this event. And then the real star of the show will be John Dahl, an engineer at our Palmdale plant. as well as Teresa May, a treatment plant operator at our Palmdale plant. So everything you'd ever want to know about the Palmdale plant, Teresa and John can answer those questions. And the person who will be moderating this whole virtual event will be Genesis. But before we get started, I want to give you a little context of who the sanitation district is. So we were formed in 1923. John, could you move the slide forward?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, all right. Hold on. There we go.
There you go. Thank
Sorry
you,
about
John.
that.
No problem. So we were formed in 1923. This is an actual shot about 100 years ago, a little bit more than 100 years ago, of raw sewage going into Santa Monica Bay. And because of this raw sewage, it led to life expectancy on average for LA County back in 1920, 1919, 1923, around 50 to 55 years of age. And people quickly realized it was because of improper sanitation. Raw sewage was going into our rivers and our ocean. And so folks passed the law, they wrote a law, passed a law called the Sanitation District Act that created our agency in 1923. Since that moment in time in 1923, we have now grown to have 24 sanitation districts. Next slide.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, sorry about that. It's acting real slow for some reason.
Okay.
There we go.
There you go. So we started down in the South Bay, where you see SBC, where my cursor's at, or where the South Bay on that slide. And now we've grown to 24 sanitation districts, as far north as Lancaster and Palmdale and Antelope Valley, and as far south as Long Beach. And each of these 24 sanitation districts, and we'll use sanitation district number 20, if John, you could put your cursor there, as an example of a typical sanitation district. Each sanitation district is based on drainage areas. So we're looking for areas that drain by gravity to one of our treatment plants. So within a particular sanitation district, you could have multiple cities because parts of each of those cities drain to our treatment plant. For District 20, for example, the areas that drain to that Palmdale plant are the city of Palmdale and then unincorporated areas of Los Angeles County. So the board of directors for that district are the mayor, city council rep from Palmdale, and a chairperson of LA County Board of Supervisors. So that goes for every one of our district. If you look any district, it's dependent on drainage area, and whatever cities are in there, there's a respective representative. So this allows us to have local control for each of these districts, but yet we have the buying power of a larger agency, these 24 sanitation districts. We now, with these 24 sanitation districts, we treat about 400 million gallons of sewage. Next slide. With 11 wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's real slow for some reason. I don't know why. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Oh. Try that. Okay.
There you go. That worked. So you see the same footprint of our 24 sanitation district, but now you see these pins represent the 11 wastewater treatment plants we have throughout LA County. And you can see, we have a Long Beach plant. Our first treatment plant was JWPCP in Carson. And then we've developed all these upstream water reclamation plants, and as far north as Lancaster and Palmdale. And the two, Lancaster and Palmdale, are in the Antelope Valley, and they present unique challenges. There's the Palmdale plant that will be the focus of today's tour, and they present unique challenges. And these challenges are based on that they're in the closed basin. Of our 11 wastewater treatment plants, 9 of them, when they're done cleaning their water, if it's not reused, they have a river body, they have a water body, either a river or an ocean that they can discharge to. But the two in the Antelope Valley, and John will put his cursor at Lancaster and Palmdale, those are locations, those plants. If you look at this aerial shot, you can see the contours of the mountains. So all the water from these two treatment plants flow to the northeast towards Edwards Air Force Base, and there's no river, there's no ocean there. So every drop that comes into those treatment plants, unlike the other 9 that we have further south in LA County, we have to manage it on land. I mean, if we have water in our Los Coyotes plant, there's our Whittier Narrows, we have a water body close by, or we can, you know, so we can put the water there. With Lancaster and Palmdale, every drop that comes in, we have to manage it on land. So that makes a unique challenge. So even in the winter months where it may be raining, reuse isn't as high, we have to have some place where that water can be properly stored and managed. And with that, I will kick it over to the star of our show, John Dahl and Teresa May, to give you an up close and personal look at the Palmdale Water Reclamation Plant. So take it away, John.
Awesome. Thank you, Basil. Appreciate that introduction. So everybody, thank you very much for spending your time with us today, this Saturday morning. We're so happy that you're here to join us, and we're really pleased to give you this tour. So I would ask you that throughout the tour, we want to make this as interactive and as rewarding for you as possible. So as we proceed to the tour, please ask questions, and we'll be happy to answer them. Also, I want to mention that, you know, today we have a special treat for you. Teresa May will be joining us at the end and throughout the presentation, actually. So at the end, she'll talk a little bit about her pathway to becoming an operator here at the Palmdale Water Reclamation Plant. And then she could talk a little bit about, you know, how a day in the life of an operator is, a little bit about that, and what it takes to become an operator. So really glad to have you, Teresa. Thank you for joining us here. This is great. So, okay, I will start out with, we'll start out in our homes, and we'll see where the wastewater flows. We'll follow it to the plant. We will talk about the treatment in the plant itself and how we manage the water here at the Palmdale plant. So, see the video? And of course, it starts with the bathroom, which is where everybody assumes that all the waste is generated that goes into a wastewater treatment plant. And that's not necessarily true. So you can see you got the shower there, you get your bathtub, somebody brushing their teeth. And of course, all that contributes to the waste stream. But also in our house, what contributes to the waste stream is the kitchen and the laundry room. So everything that goes down the drain goes to a wastewater treatment plant. So that's something to think about when you're going throughout your normal activities during the day. All right, so here's a graphic that kind of shows how the water is conveyed to the plant. So first, it leaves your house out of a smaller pipe, goes into a local sewer, which is a larger pipe, and then from there to a manhole and to a trunk sewer. So you guys probably seen these manholes on the streets themselves as you drive down your local streets, whether in your neighborhood or a major street itself. And so those manholes are above ground, which depict that there's a local sewer underneath the ground. So the Palmdale Water Reclamation Plant was formed in 1953 and first started treating 0.75 MGD of flow. We had about 4,000 customers at that time. And so to give you an idea what an MGD is, it stands for 1,000,000 gallons per day. And how that looks is if you were to have a garden hose and you were operating a garden hose, think about 140 garden hoses at once flowing, and that's a single MGD. So today, the Palmdale Water Reclamation Plant treats about an average of 10 MGD a day. And then of course we had to have several upgrades throughout the years to get to this point. As you saw in the video, the plant is sort of somewhat isolated off by itself, which is nice, and you can kind of get an overview of the plant. All right. So in this picture here, you can see an operator. He's looking at a couple of screens in our operations control room. And on those screens, you see different colors. There's green colors and red colors. And what it is this system itself is a DCS system, which stands for Distributive Control System. And how it works is that an operator can control pumps, valves, processes just by clicking and changing things. And then jumping back to the colors that you see on the screen, a green color means it's on. So like if it's a pump, it's on, or if it's valve, it's open, or if it's red, that means that pump is off or the valve is closed. And this information helps, it's sort of a cost savings approach, if you will, because now an operator can sit and control many different functions across the plant just in this one location. That doesn't mean that an operator doesn't have to go out into the plant and observe and make adjustments. That does occur, but this does help with the control of the plant itself. In his hand, you can see an iPad, and that is what we use for what we call electronic rounds keeping. So every day, an operator will go into the plant and walk around, has a prescribed route that he or she takes, and then records information as they go through the plant. This information tells the operator, like if something's changed, maybe a temperature of a particular pump has increased, it gives an indication that there may be a failure on the horizon. And if that's the case, then we get maintenance involved and then they repair it. So it's a way of maintaining the plant to keep it working optimally. All right, so here's a graphic of the Palmdale Water Reclamation Plant. We're going to basically follow the water through the plant as we take this tour. There's a couple of things, if there's anything I want you to remember, it's that there's three main mechanisms used to clean water, and that is physical separation, biological process, and chemical process. So those three things are used to clean wastewater. There's many different ways of doing the same thing, depending upon which plant you're at. But those are the three mechanisms that are used to clean water. So we'll start here, which is the primary systems. And we'll start at the inflow pumps, which is on your lower left-hand part of the screen. Now, these pumps are depicted way low in reference to the plant itself because we have to collect the water at a low point and then pump it up above grade to the surface and then begin the treatment process itself. Now, the Antelope Valley is very flat, and so we convey the water to the plant via gravity. And because we convey it to via gravity, we have to have the pipes sloping downward towards the plant itself so the water will flow downhill. And so the water enters the plant at about 30 feet below grade, and then we pump it above grade and start the treatment process. All right, so the photograph on the left is the entrance to the pump station, the inflow pump station, and stairway. And then the photograph on the right are the pumps themselves. Now we have 5 inflow pumps for Palmdale. The horsepower of each pump is about just under 100 horsepower, and each pump pumps about 10 mgd. So if you remember towards the beginning of the tour, I mentioned that the Palmdale Water Reclamation Plant processes an average of 10 mgd of flow, and we have 5 pumps. The reason why we have 5 pumps is even though they each can flow 10 mgd is for redundancy reasons. And so that way, if we have a pump that goes out, we could just pull it out and we can continue on operations without any problems. And you'll see that throughout the plant that we'll have these redundant systems. So that way, if we have to do some maintenance work or something breaks or whatever, we have redundancy to continue to treat and manage the systems. All right, so next is the screen structure. So the water is pumped up to the screening structure, and this is the first step of physical separation. Anything over, I'd say about 1 inch in diameter is separated out, and we start removing these systems through this flex rake system here. And I'll have a graphic here that kind of shows this in a second, but the water kind of flows up, and then the screen stops it and then pulls it up and out. And here's a graphic kind of showing what it looks from the side view. You can see the debris flowing from left to right on the screen. The screen catches it, brings it up, and then in this graphic, it drops it onto a conveyor belt. Here at Palmdale, we actually drop it into a washer compactor, which basically kind of washes it down, grinds it up, and then pushes it out to the side. And here is a depiction of what comes out of the screening structures. You see here, it's mostly rags. So each plant is, you pull out different items depending upon what city you're serving. So here at Palmdale and Lancaster, we serve mostly household. There are some small businesses. There are also some, we have a prison in Lancaster. And so we do pull out a lot of rags, as you can see here in the bin itself. So we do get a lot of rags at this particular plant. And here's the graphic showing it up close. And oh yeah, we wanted to include this for you guys. So as you can see here, there's a couple of jars. We have toilet paper on the left and flushable wipes on the right. So the toilet paper on the left, you can see it breaks up really good. The flushable wipes, however, do not. And so the reason why we bring this up to you is that the flushable wipes create a load on the plant. It creates a lot of issues. So what happens with these flushable wipes, because they don't break down, is that they come into our inflow pumps, they clog up our pumps, and then we got to pull these pumps out and we got to rebuild them. So that's an extra cost on the plant itself. And so if you have any flushable wipes, the best way to dispose of them is to throw them away. Maybe you have a baby at home and you're changing diapers. We all like to use the flushable wipes with the baby diapers, clean the baby because it works real well. Maybe throw it into, I think they have diaper genies now that you can throw it into. So that's how you want to dispose of them. You don't want to flush them down. I would like to also add that Assembly Bill 818 has been introduced. I think it's been passed, if I'm not mistaken. And what that is by July of 2022, any flushable wipes on the for sale have to be labeled as non-flushable, or you can't flush them down the toilet. And that's in response to a lot of cities having issues with the flushable wipes. And so we're trying to minimize the amount of them that we get into our waste streams. So that's a step that we're taking in the right direction. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on with the tour. Next is our grit chamber. So the purpose of the grit chamber is to remove exactly what it says. We want to remove grit. We want to move these smaller, heavier objects, eggshells also. And the analogy I like to use is that, and the reason why we remove these items is because we want to protect downstream equipment. And so the analogy I like to use is like, if you have a bicycle and a bicycle chain, you don't put sand in your bicycle chain because that will wear out your chain and sprocket. And so just like we want to protect our chain and sprocket while we ride our bikes, we want to protect our equipment here at the plant. And so we want to remove all that grit earlier on in the process if possible. Also, I want to point out, if you look at the water here, it's very dark and sometimes I hear the words yucky when we do the physical tours of the water itself. I want to point out that it's not the water that's bad, it's what's in the water that's bad. And so these processes are designed to remove what's in the water so that we can recover the water and use that valuable resource in other areas or for beneficial reuse. And so it's not the water that's bad, it's what's in the water. So once we remove what's bad in the water, we have good water remaining. And we're going to show you that at the end of the tour. All right. Oops. And here's a video of the primary settling tanks. And so the purpose of the primary settling tanks is to remove, again, it's the physical separation. It's to remove anything that may float and anything that may sink in the tank itself. And so looking on the top of the tanks, you can see these boards that are here. Now these boards slowly go across the water and they collect everything that floats in the tank itself. And these boards also go underneath the tank and collect everything that settles in the tank. And everything that's collected on top and on the bottom is then pumped to the digesters, which we're going to show you in this tour as well. Now, this water slowed way down. We want to slow it way down to allow opportunity for these items to float and to sink and to remove them. And so I think we have a picture here. Yep, we do. And so this is what it looks like inside the primary settling tanks. And on the bottom here, you can see the chain of flight system, these boards, and on the top also you can see them. And so they just kind of rotate around and collect this material. And here's a graphic of the primary settling tanks. And on the left-hand side, you see where sludge is. That sludge is collected on the bottom. Sludge is a term that we use for all the material that we collect that floats and that sinks, or actually scum, I think is what we use on the top. Yep, there it is. And so this material, again, is then transported to the digesters for further processing. All right, so here's a picture of one of our, I'm sorry, this is a picture of our primary galleries. On the right-hand side, you can see the tank 6 here. That's settling tank number 6 that's been identified. And we have some pipes here. And we have some pipes that go into the wall itself. And so these pipes that go into the wall are actually at the bottom of the hoppers in the primary tanks. And they're collecting that material, and that material is then being pumped, transported to the digesters. Okay, now that we finished the primary portion of the system, we're going to move on to the secondary system. Genesis, any questions that popped up when we were going through the primary systems?
Just if it operates 24/7?
Oh yeah, yes, excellent question. Yes, the plant operates 24/7. So there's always wastewater that comes into the plant, and this flow does kind of vary a little bit. It kind of goes up, it kind of goes down. So you can imagine at night when everybody's sleeping, the flow goes down, and in the morning when everybody gets up, you know, and they start cooking, they're taking showers, the flow kind of goes up. During the day when everybody's at work, the flow goes down, and then when everybody comes home from work, then the flow goes back up again. And so you just kind of see this diurnal movement throughout the day based off of human activity. Now, I guess I'll throw this question out there to the audience. So what do you think our busiest day is, the most flow that we will see at the plant? What day of the year do you think that is? Does anybody want to take a guess what that might be?
I'm looking at the chats. Oh, someone, Ashley, says the Super Bowl during halftime. Someone else says New Year's Day. 4th
Yeah.
of July.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, holidays are very, and of course, sports days are very good guesses. So our biggest days are actually on Thanksgiving, and actually also the Super Bowl is a very busy day for us. I say busy in terms of high flow. So you can imagine everybody's at home. There's a lot of activity going on, thinking about, Thanksgiving and the Super Bowl. And, you're having your barbecue, you're cooking, there's just a lot of human activity. And so we do see a lot of flow in those days. And actually, I've heard, and maybe Tracy can confirm this, but I heard that on Super Bowl day, you can actually kind of tell when it's halftime by the flow will go up during halftime.
We can.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So so as an operator, you can look at the DCS system that we showed you earlier, and you can see the graph kind of go up during halftime when everybody's rushing to use the restroom or grab something or whatever it is, and then it goes down after that because everybody's back to the TV to watch the game. So right. It's just kind of interesting that happens.
There was a second part to that question. They said, how many operator shifts are there at the Palmdale plant? There is only one shift from 7 to 3:30. And all of our processes actually have alarms on them. So if, let's say, one of our influent pumps fails, it will automatically switch to another pump. However, an alarm will go off, and it goes through it's called a chatterbox system. And it calls an operator in to come and check it out and make sure everything's running properly and reset the pump if we need to do that or whatever. So even though we're not here 24/7, somebody can be here 24/7.
Yeah, excellent. Yes, it's a very good point too. Yep, absolutely. Okay, so we'll move on to the secondary systems. So the primary systems were physical separation. Now we're going to the secondary systems, and we're going to talk about the biological process up here, and then we're going to talk about the solids process down here. So I'll move on. And so now we're going to talk about the biological treatment. Now the biological treatment is considered the heart of the treatment plant itself. This is where a lot of important removal happens in the system itself. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about this. So as you can see, there are aerated tanks, as you can see here with my cursor, and non-aerated tanks. Now, the reason for this is that Palmdale has what they call an NDN process, a nitrification denitrification process. This is where we aerate some tanks, and some other tanks are non-aerated. They're anoxic tanks. And the reason why is because we're using this to convert ammonia to nitrite, and then to nitrate, and then to nitrogen gas. And so we're basically eliminating the ammonia at this point. Now, ammonia is considered poisonous to the aqueous environment. And so we want to remove that. We want to have clean water by the end of the process. And so by having aerated tanks and non-aerated tanks, this selects certain microbes to do certain work, the work that we want. So we're basically manipulating the environment so these microbes do the work that we want them to do. Also, I want to point out that in the primary systems, we have done as much physical separation as we can. And now we have to employ microbes to remove the waste in the water, because the wastes are dissolved in the water. Think of it this way: if you had sugar that's mixed into your water, you're not going to be able to physically separate it out by letting it settle or float. It's just not going to happen. It's dissolved in the water. And so with these wastes dissolved in the water, these microbes will go in, they'll eat that waste for us. And then later on, as I'll show you, we'll remove the microbes out of the water themselves. So they do a lot of work for us. And the operators have to do a lot of care and feeding of the microbes. They have to know, what the concentration of microbes are. They have to make sure they have enough air. There's all sorts of things that they have to do to kind of care and feed the microbes to make sure that they're working to their optimum in order to remove as much waste as we can. And so here's a graphic kind of shows, you see some aerated here, and some activated sludge that's going into the aeration basin. And I'll talk a little bit about the activated sludge here in a second when we go to the secondary systems. And here's the MOs, or microbes, microorganisms. We generally refer to them as bugs here at the plant. And so in this video, you can kind of see where a lab technician is looking at the microbes. Sometimes, not a lot here at the AV, but sometimes the plant will take samples of the microbes, and then the lab personnel will look at them underneath the microscope to see what the health is of the microorganism environment. So what we want to do is we want to have a variety of microbes. We don't want just to have one microbe. We want to have a big variety of them. And the analogy I like to use is if we were all going to a buffet, right? Think of a buffet with all sorts of different foods. And there's several of us going to this buffet. Not everybody is going to eat or like the same kind of food. Like somebody may go for the salad, or somebody may go for the pizza, or somebody may go for the fish, right? So think of the buffet food as waste in comparison to the microbes as people in this buffet example. And so by having these diverse communities of microbes, they go in and eat all these different wastes that are in the waste stream and remove that waste for us. And so that's why we want to have a diverse group of microbes. All right, so next we're going to move on to the secondary settling tanks. Now, much like the primary settling tanks, the secondary settling tanks is a physical removal. You'll see this constructed very much the same way as a primary settling tank. And their purpose is to settle out the microbes. And luckily for us, the microbes are just a little bit heavier than water. And so when they enter the secondary settling tanks, we settle them out. And this picture here, this is the end of the secondary settling tanks. And you can see here, excuse me, we have this trough with these alligator looking like teeth here. Now, the reason why we have these alligator like looking teeth here is that we're trying to slowly scalp off the water from the tank itself. We want this water to be as still as possible so that these microbes, which are just barely a little bit heavier than water, will settle out. We want to settle them out. And then once we settle them out, then we will either what they call waste them, which is sent to the digesters, or we'll send them back to the the biological process. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second here. And so here's a photograph of the weight of the water that skimmed off the tanks. As you can see, the water is fairly clean here. Although it does look real clean, we're still not done yet. We've still got a lot more processes to go through to fully clean it. But just even taking these steps here, you can see that we've done a pretty good job of cleaning the water. So I mentioned earlier that the microbes are collected at the secondary settling basin. They're actually sent to 2 different locations at that point. They're either sent to the biological tanks or they're sent over to the digesters or to, well, first they go through a DAF, then through a digester. We're going to talk about in a second. Now, the reason why we do that is that we want to maintain a proper population of microbes. So we don't want too many microbes. We don't want too few microbes. So the microbes are getting fed, they're getting oxygen, they're very happy, they procreate. We don't want too many microbes. And so what we'll do is we will take the excess microbes at the end of the secondary settling tanks, and we'll send them off ultimately to the digesters for processing. And some of them we'll send back to the biological tanks. Now, the reason why we do that is not only to maintain the population of microbes that we want, but those microbes that we send back are very, very hungry at that point. They've been in the tanks for a few hours without food. And so by sending it back to the front of that biological tank, they're very hungry, and they're going to eat up the waste and they consume the waste and remove it for us. And so that's one reason why we do that. All right, so I will next go to the DAF. This is the dissolved air flotation unit. So the the microbes that we are wasting or getting rid of, the excess microbes, are first sent to the DAF. And the purpose of the DAF is to remove excess water before then pumping those microbes over to the digesters for the processing. So we don't want to fill our digesters with water. We want to fill our digesters with microbes and sludge that we want to process and remove. And so here's a picture of a digester, and on the lower left-hand screen, you can see the bacteria that are in the digester. So these are anaerobic digesters, meaning without oxygen. And so we will pump if you remember, we pump the waste that we collect from the primary tanks, and then the excess microbes from the secondary tanks to the digesters. And this is where we process it. And a digester is very much like your stomach. It's about 98 degrees. It's anaerobic, meaning without oxygen. The material will sit in the digester for about 20 days, maybe a little bit longer before we go on to the next process, but it sits in there and it digests is what it does. And I think we have a video kind of, we're showing it. Yep, there it is. And you can see a lot of pipes on the digester. And they do different things. So some pipes provide steam to the digester to heat it. Some pipes collect the methane gas that is generated from the anaerobic digester. And that methane gas is considered a greenhouse gas, so we have to properly dispose of it. So how or beneficially reuse it. So here at Palmdale, we use gas to heat the steam boilers, which in turn heat the digesters themselves. And the excess gas that we have, we flare off, we burn it, we destruct it, we destroy it. And that way it doesn't infect the environment that way. There's also pipes that pump in sludge, pump out sludge. And that's what, that's what they do. So, all right, so I'll go to the next slide. All right, so after the material's been in the digester for a period of time, we then send it to the dewatering building. Now, what you see here, these are centrifuges. And so they're very much kind of like a washing machine, if you will, turn on its side. And so we send the material from the digesters into the centrifuges. It spins really, really fast, and it spins out the water. And the reason why we do it is actually twofold. The first reason is cost reason. We want to remove as much water as we can because it costs money to transport water off-site. And we're going to transport these solids to a composting facility, which I'm going to show you here in a second. And so trucking costs It can be expensive, and we want to remove the water. The second reason is that it's also reduces the volume of the material. And by removing that water, remove the volume of the material itself. And I have a video here showing you how a centrifuge works. As you can see on the right, the material enters the centrifuge and it's spun out. The material is then pushed forward, and then in the backside of that centrifuge back here, you can see where the water is coming out. That water is called centrate, and then it's put back into the beginning of the plant, and it goes through the treatment process again. All right, so here's a picture of a 40th Street property, and this is where we store our biosolids before we transport it off-site and for to be beneficially reused. And it's used for composting. So we send it to a company called Synagro up in the desert, and they compost it, and then that compost is then beneficially reused. Okay, so that completes the secondary systems. So next is the tertiary systems. So Genesis, are there any questions on the secondary systems before we move on?
Yeah, what is the lifespan of the microorganisms?
Oh, that kind of depends, and maybe I can ask you this question, Teresa. Maybe you can help me out with this. Yeah, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit. So we do have a way. So we do monitor the biological systems. We don't want the microbes to be too old. We don't want them to be too young, and so we kind of monitor how old or how young they are. And I don't want to over speak. Maybe you can help me out with this, Teresa, on this part. I think you're muted.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute it. There's actually a long, complicated math problem that you have to do to figure it out. But we can, I want to say like 1 to 2 weeks average, I think. But they're growing and proliferating constantly. So there's always bugs in there, but I think it's like about a 2-week lifespan.
And those are the microbes that we waste, right? That's how okay, yeah. So we calculate, it's a long complicated math problem, like you were saying, Teresa. What is it MCRT, right?
MCRT, yeah.
That's right, yeah. So not to get too much in depth, but you calculate it, based off of volume, your concentration, and then how much you waste, how much you recycle. So all those little pieces are then put into a math formula, which you determine how old your microbes are.
Right.
So yeah, that was a good question.
Cool, and I think we could move on to the rest of them.
Okay, awesome. All right, so next we're going to go to the tertiary system. So we're going to talk about the tertiary system, and then we're also going to talk about the recycled water storage reservoirs. All right, so after the secondary settling basin, after the secondary settling tanks, we then go to the equalization tank, which is just after those settling. So this is kind of an overview of it. This tank is about 5 million gallons. Can hold about 5 million gallons. Now, there's actually a couple of purposes why we have this tank here. So you can see there's a lot of concrete and there's some pumps here. We spent money building this thing. And so the reason why we have it at this part of the plant is for 2 reasons. The first reason is for redundancy. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we have some redundant systems. This is actually one of the redundant systems we have. So if we have an issue at the end of the plant where we lose power or something breaks, or something catastrophic happens, we can store water in this tank for a period of time, buying us time to make the necessary repairs if we needed some. The other reason we have it is for a cost saving measure. So if you remember earlier, we talked about how the water kind of flows up and down throughout the day, and even throughout the year, it kind of goes up and down. So what this does is that we could store water in this tank, and then we can have a steady outflow of an average of 10 mgd that then goes to the remaining treatment processes in the plant. And so when we add chemicals to the plant. Like when we do the tertiary, treatment system, we add hyperchlorite and ammonia to form chloramines. The operators have, a requirement to maintain a certain amount of residual in that water. And so if the water's flowing up and down, they're always kind of chasing it. And they're adding a safety factor because we want to make sure that we don't violate our permit requirements. And so by trying to chase it and follow it, we'll be adding a little bit more chemical than what we need to. But by having a steady flow, then the operator can zoom in or close in on that chemical requirements and maintain it a little more steady. And so it's an easier way of operating it. You don't have to spend as much tension on it as well, because you can kind of set it and just kind of monitor it and it goes, rather than have to always constantly monitor it. So that's another reason why we have that secondary settling basin at that point. Okay, so after the secondary, after the secondary equalization tank, we then go to the filtration process. And this is a photograph of the filtrations. We got 6 tanks, as you can see here, and we'll have a little close up on it. And we use cloth media here. At Lancaster, we use a gravity filter. So I mentioned earlier, there are many different ways of doing the same thing. Here we use a cloth filter, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And here's some pipes underneath. You can see the pipes underneath the filter itself, which we'll show you here in a second. And so we're going to open up the filter so you can look inside. And here is a close-up of the cloth filters with water in them. And you can see the water is kind of cascading down onto the filter itself. And I have a video. You see the water kind of fills up. And so then the water kind of gravity flows down and then through the filter itself and then into the center of the pipe itself. And then it flows out from there. Here's a close-up of the filters without the water, so you can kind of see them. These are assembled via wedges. There's separate wedges, as you can see here, to kind of form this pie shape, or pie-shaped wedges, I should say, form the circle. And here is an example of a wedge itself. Now, just to give you an idea what it's like, it's very much like carpeting. If you run your hand up along it, it feels very, very much like carpeting. We have an example here at the plant that, so when we do a physical tour, we bring it out and you can kind of rub your hands on it and kind of get an idea what it feels like. All right, so next then we go to the disinfection process. So we're going to go to the chlorination tanks. And as I mentioned earlier, maybe I kind of jumped ahead of myself a little bit when I was talking about the utilization tank. But as I mentioned earlier, we disinfect using hyperchlorite and which is bleach, by the way, and we use ammonia. We join those two chemicals together to form chloramines, which is a persistent disinfection that we use here at the plant. And we have a steady flow coming in, so we're able to kind of narrow in and zoom in on what we need to apply. Now these chemicals spend about 4 hours of contact time roughly in these tanks. And as you can see, we have covers over the tanks themselves. And so, and our other processes don't have covers. And I kind of mentioned this during the tours because I think it's kind of important because it's a cost saving measure that we do. We spend money to build these covers on here. And so I kind of want to throw out the question, maybe somebody can answer, why do you think that we have these covers on these tanks, but we don't have them in other locations? Why would we have them here? I know you know. If somebody has a pool, I bet they know. If somebody has a pool at home, I bet they know.
Okay, we have someone, we have high winds, gases. Susan says to prevent evaporation.
Yeah. Yep.
And chemicals could be toxic or stuff could fall in.
Yeah, so all good answers.
Wait, one more, to prevent bacteria growth.
That's
it.
Yeah, that's not a bad answer either. What I'm looking for is that we were actually, so if you have a pool at home, you may have noticed during the summer, you have to add a lot more chemical than you do in the winter. And I'm talking about, bleach, hypochlorite, chlorine. And the reason why is because the sun deactivates it or evaporates it. And so by having these covers over it, that maintains the chemical concentration in the water itself, and therefore it can do what it needs to do by deactivating any microbes that may have slipped through the filtration process, or any material that made it through the filtration process. And so we put those covers on there to keep the concentration of the chemicals that go through there at their best, and that saves us in chemical costs over the year. And so during the summer, obviously, if those tanks were exposed, we'd be using a lot more chemical than during the winter time when there's not as much sun. And so, yeah, those are all good answers. And also too, we want to keep debris out of it, like somebody had mentioned. Wind could be blowing in dust and things like that. So we also protect the equipment that way. Okay, so there's another viewpoint. And here's the water itself as it's coming out. You can see how clean it is. Now, if you were standing here for the physical tour, it would smell very much like a pool. You get that strong chlorine smell because we've disinfecting the water at this point. And here's a photograph showing what it looks like before and after. So you can see that we've done a lot from the start of the treatment process to the end of the treatment process. Now we have clean water at the end that we can beneficially reuse up here in the Antelope Valley. And as it says in the slide itself, it takes about an average of 12 hours to treat water from the time it enters the plant to the time it goes outside the plant. All right, so next I'm going to talk about our effluent management. And so as Basil had mentioned earlier on, is that we're in a closed basin, so we have to effectively manage the effluent that comes out and beneficially manage the effluent that comes out. So in this particular graphic, you see some purple pipes here, and these pipes are designated purple because they're reclaimed water. So if you happen to be driving somewhere and you see purple pipe, that is the color that designates reclaimed water. Now down below these blue colors, these are actually our sewer systems that go into the Palmdale plant. So we collect water from this side of the valley, and then over from this side of the valley, and we transmit it all to the plant itself. And then from there, we pump it all the way out to the reservoirs. Now, the reason why the reservoirs are so far away from the plant is that there was no land available closer to the plant when we upgraded the plant, the last upgrade, which was in 2012, to build those reservoirs. So we have to pump the water all the way out to the reservoirs. And these reservoirs are filled and depleted throughout the year. So during the wintertime, when water demand is low, these reservoirs will fill up. And during the summertime, when demand is high, then we'll draw from the reservoirs and we'll empty them out. And so we got a video of the reservoirs themselves. So these reservoirs are just under 1 billion gallons total in storage. So we store a lot of water out there. These reservoirs are about 1 mile long and about 1/4 mile wide. They're pretty big, as you can see here in the video. It kind of gives you perspective of them. And so just to kind of touch on the engineering of this, this was, if you think about it, you have to design the system. You have to think about the amount of water that's going to be coming into them, the demand of the water that goes out of them, how big you need to make the reservoirs. It's also a very sandy environment out here in the desert. And so constructing them, you got to think about how you're going to construct them, what materials, how you're going to, make sure that everything is built correctly. And so there was a lot of work that went into it, and this is, and we're able to build these reservoirs through all those processes. All right, so next, moving on, this is where we use our recycled water. So we use it for irrigation, agricultural irrigation. So we irrigate about 2,000 acres of farmland that's used for non-fodder. It's a non-fodder crop, which is basically used for just feeding animals or things like that. So we don't use it for growing food that people eat, but but that maybe farm animals we eat. So like alfalfa, things like that is what will grow. Here's a video kind of showing one of the agricultural areas. And you can see the pivot is what it's called over here. And this is what rotates around the farmland, if you will, to irrigate it. And I have a close-up of it here. You can kind of see these sticks just kind of hang down and then they kind of spray out. You have wheels on it, and then they slowly move around in a circle and irrigate the farmland. And so we also send water to McAdam Park over here in Palmdale, and we beneficially reuse the water that way to keep our grass green. We can play sports, things like that. And I'd like to point out also that the reclaimed water is safe for human interaction because we've disinfected it properly at the plant, and so we can beneficially reuse that water. And I think that is kind of, yeah, I think that's it. So from here, I will hand it over to Teresa.
Yes. So I'm a treatment plant operator too. So I'm actually in a lead position. Most treatment, so we would have a crew below us, and we structure their days to do their rounds, help out maintenance. So there's a lot of things that we do here. So our rounds, as John had mentioned earlier, is we do them every morning, and that's to check all the processes in the plant. We go through and we look at all the pumps, make sure all the chemicals are dosing properly, just basically make sure that the plant is running as it should be. If there's any issues, if we can't fix it, if it's something that the operators are not allowed to fix, if it has to go to maintenance, we write up a request for them to do the work. There's other things that we do throughout the day too, like if a mechanic or stationary mechanic or the M&C crew need to work on something, the operators are responsible for making it safe for them to work. So we do what's called the lockout tagout process, and that we get trained on. It's turning off the electrical power to a pump, for instance, so that it doesn't turn on while they're working on it. So that's something that we're responsible for, so that, like I said, so the maintenance crew doesn't get injured while they're working on something. We also make sure that the plant is clean. That's important. If you live out in the Antelope Valley, on Monday, we had a huge, like 40-mile wind storm all day long, sand everywhere in the plant. We actually had a power dip, so that a few things shut off during the power dip, and we had to restart them. Luckily, we didn't have to go on to generator power, which happens when there's a power outage. Which I don't think John talked about that. We have 3 huge diesel generators that will run the whole plant. That goes on when there's a power outage. So that's something that the operators do. How I became an operator was I was actually a secretary here, and I saw how the operators worked, and I asked, how do I become an operator? And they said, well, go to Sacramento State, look at their wastewater program. So I did the first couple of courses. It's a home study. Then I took my state board and I got my grade 1 certification. I applied for the job and I got it. And I've been an operator for almost 4 years now. Did you want to say something, Genesis? You're muted.
Oh man, I can't believe it happened to me. Yeah, thank you so much for giving us your introduction and a little bit of background to what you do. Actually, while we have you, I want to see if I can ask you some questions
Sure.
that people have here. So does each plant have its own reservoir, or does Palmdale share with Lancaster?
Palmdale and Lancaster each have their own reservoirs. As John mentioned earlier, we're the only 2 systems that have reservoirs. All the other plants actually discharge into a water body of some sort.
Oh, okay, cool. And now the next question is, I heard that after rain, the plants turn off. Is that true?
No, they do not turn off. We run 24/7, 365 days a year. Actually, when it rains, we actually have a larger load, and sometimes we have a crew stay if there's a large rainstorm. We actually will have a few operators stay just in case there's a plant overload and we need a little bit of extra help.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. That's cool. Okay, so next question. So is the recycled water not potable?
No, it is not. But as John said, it is safe for human interaction. A lot of people have a stigma about drinking sewage water. So no, it's at this point in time, it is not potable.
It's just not permitted to drink. We don't, here at Palmdale and Lancaster, we're not permitted to drink this water. There's other plants that have those permits, and maybe Basil, you can kind of add to this, but like Orange County, they have a plant down there that they further refine the water, and actually I think they bottle it or do something with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, the water is essentially meets drinking water standard, but like John said, right now, the law is that you can't drink it directly, but it's safer than the water that billions of people drink every day. Just in this country, we're very blessed. In Orange County, the water is clean, but what they have in Orange County is they put it through another step where they purify it. And we're looking at a project like that down in our largest treatment plant. But the water is totally safe. It's essentially drinking water, but there's that yuck factor. That part of the reason we give these tours is let people understand. Like I think John said, we want the water. We're just taking all the stuff that's in that's water. The same water that comes from a cloud is what they're producing. So it's totally safe. It's just at this point, people aren't permitted to drink it as is. Hopefully that wasn't too long of an answer.
Hope not. Okay, so the next question, this is interesting, and feel free if any of you have questions, add them at the Q&A and we'll take care of them. Ask them now while I still have Basil here. I'm kidding, no, he'll be here till the end. Okay, so the next question, and maybe Basil, our TV expert, will know about this. The show Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe had a room like that, and they were talking about the tanks, but it was very dirty. So was that not the influent pump if you saw the episode?
I didn't see the episode. I've watched a lot of the shows, but I think John and Teresa and the folks in our operation crew, they really pride themselves in making sure the plants are very clean. They're kind of fastidious, if I can say that. I'm not so much, but John and Teresa are definitely, you know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of credit goes to the operators and also our maintenance and E&I staff as well. You know, cleanliness is part of our work ethic here at the plant, and so we, you know, keep everything as clean as we can. And you know, and whenever when maintenance has to do some work, we'll go, like for example, we have to take down a tank, like a primary tank. We'll go down there, we'll drain the tank, we'll clean it out real good, you know, wash it down real good, and then we'll then they'll give the tank over to maintenance and they'll go in it and work it. So yeah. And I think we saw some pictures earlier on of the primary tanks where we showed the chain of flight system above and below, and you saw how clean that tank. That was the tank that was taken out of service in order to do some maintenance.
Yeah, I think that's the one I think that was what you were showing when they brought up the question. And if I can so humbly add, usually when people come visit our plants, they're so impressed by how clean it is. They were expecting something, yeah. They were expecting something worse, but usually we always get comments that they're so impressed at how clean and we maintain it.
Awesome.
A few of them even look like little college campuses. You have like trees everywhere and stuff. But anyway, okay, so the next question is, what is the detention time in the primary tanks?
You want to answer the Teresa, or you want me to take a stab at it?
You can take a stab at it.
Yeah, it's about, sure. It's the flow of course goes up and down, so the detention time changes a little bit, but it's roughly about 2 hours. Maybe a little bit less.
2 hours,
So-
okay, going once, going twice. All right, 2 hours it is.
No, it sounds
It's-
Yeah, we're up
It's
for
2
almost.
hours on average, yeah.
Yeah, it's about 2 hours. So you think about it, I mean, then we really slowed down that water, right? That water is going very, very slow because we want stuff to flow and stuff to sink. In the previous process, in the grit, which is a grit chamber, water flows very quickly through that. We're only talking minutes that the water spends in that process before it goes to the primary settling tanks.
We're at the hour mark, and this is like at the end of a movie, and we have to unveil the surprise and the plug for next week's show, right, John?
Yes, I think so, yes.
Yes,
Before
I
we'll
just
take more questions, but
have to ask.
who's
Okay.
our surprise guest?
Alfonso Vasquez.
And
Alfonso,
because
you
next,
there?
yeah,
There he is.
Good morning, everyone.
morning, Alfonso. Next week at the same time, Alfonso and John will give you a tour of the Lancaster water reclamation plant. It's very similar to this one, but where they take the recycled water is a little bit different. There's some unique challenges there. So we're plugging next week's virtual tour at 9 a.m. So we want to make sure people get that plug in, and back to the questions that you might have, Genesis.
Okay, yes. The next question, I think this is our final question. During an in-person tour, would you say the process is smelly?
Okay, well, no, this is a great question. To answer it honestly, yeah, and so you can consider, I mean, obviously an odor is considered a nuisance, right? So you'll have a strong odor in the primary tanks and in the by the grit chamber, and then also by the flex rate, right? But as you go down the process, it gets cleaner and cleaner and cleaner and less odor. And so that's confirmation that you're cleaning that water, and that water is you're improving the process as you go down the line. So yeah, it does have a little bit of an odor at the primary tanks in the beginning of the process, but it does get better. I would also like to point out that we're up here in the Antelope Valley, we have a different air district than down in LA area. So what's really cool about the in-person tours, even though you have that odor, you can also see the processes. You can see what's happening rather than just seeing a tank with some covers over it. It doesn't really, convey the message of what's going on at that particular process. So that part of it, I think is pretty cool. I like that part of it. But kind of a long-winded answer, but yeah, it does smell at the beginning of the process, but by the time you get to the end, it's there's no odor at all. It's very clean smelling.
And you do get used to the odor after a while, which is kind of sad to say, but you do. It doesn't smell as bad as when I first started.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And just one final question before we will let you go. And by the way, I posted the link I'm gonna post the link in the chat for more information on next week's tour if you're interested in Lancaster. So while I do that, how does the system compare to those portable filters and bottles?
I'm sorry, portable what?
Filters
Portable
in
filters
bottles.
in bottles. I think it's those bottles where you put water in it and the bottles like automatically filter it. And they can like get it from rivers and stuff.
Oh, so that's like a carbon filter, I think. I mean, so you're talking like the those life straws that they sell. I think I saw those for like campers or people that hike or whatever. So yeah, those are filters. Those are physical separation that they go through to clean the water. And we take additional steps. As you saw, we do physical separation. We also do biological separation. And then we add chemicals to make the water even safer. And so I would argue that this water is actually safer than if you were to just do a physical separation or filtration of water. That's not to say.
I think those are used for more like waters out of streams or something as well. So it's probably not as dirty a water as raw sewage water.
Yeah.
Well, Lancaster, we use anthracite, so tune in next week and you'll see our
Oh, I like that. Cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with that, well, we will conclude today's tour. Thank you everyone so much for coming, for sticking with us, and for asking some of your great questions. So like Alfonso said, we will be here next Saturday at 9 a.m. as well, and we'll be looking at Lancaster water reclamation plan, and we'll even do some comparisons on how it differs from the Palmdale plan. And well, that's it. Thank you everyone very much. And for more information, please visit www.lacsd.org/tours. And then you'll have the email address there, and you'll have this recording and other recordings of other water reclamation plants that we have in the area. So thank you very much and have a great weekend.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Have a great
Bye.
weekend.
See you next weekend.
Yeah. All right. Bye.